Good afternoon, everybody. As mentioned, my name is Nigel Smith. I'm Head of Design for SWS Certification Services. And together with my colleague, Alistair, we're here to present the topics discussed during the cabin safety side meeting. The first topic, and it created quite a lot of discussion, and it's the issue of concurrent changes on the same aircraft. And this is where you've got quite a large program, and there's several DOAs that are doing various STCs or minor changes. And you can even have the operator or the installer that takes the opportunity to introduce some existing STCs. So the comment was, is that trying to coordinate all of this, trying to define the scope that each individual is having to deal with. And it says there the importance for the liability, but that's really roles, responsibilities. And at times it can be difficult to get the relevant data from the concurrent partners. EASA agreed that it is a task to be evaluated, and it's going to be reviewed to see how it can help out to sort of try and coordinate this process. Now, as an example, we at SWS, when we have a large program with multiple applicants involved, we pull together a document that we call a Design Organisation Interface Document, or a DOID. And what this does is that it pulls all interested parties together right at the beginning, usually around the time you're developing your certification programs. And then everybody, you identify the scope for everybody, the roles, responsibilities, and other important aspects like the interfaces between each design change, because out of that becomes a very important criteria, which is what is your pre-change configuration before you then go. And then also, because you've got everybody there, some of those modifications need to be in place before your modification can be there. So it gets a priority, gets some sense of order. And then the other thing that's come out of it is that quite often there's several PCMs allocated, and we can consolidate by having a single PCM. So what we found is that this really streamlines a program, gives a lot of information, identifies the interface between all the parties, get agreements with transfers of data and potential areas of risk. And that way, you know, it helps prevent things dropping through the cracks. Typical example, you've got an IFE upgrade. One person's doing the modification on the seats, somebody's doing the aircraft level, and then everybody overlooks the seat-to-seat cables, and that usually gets found out at the last minute. We found this a very useful tool. It's something we've developed, we use, it works for us, and generally the feedback that we've had has always been very good, hasn't it, Dominic?
Yes, very good.
Next topic that came up is how to accelerate STC approvals on the EASA side. And I know pretty much at most of these meetings, it comes out about, you know, response back from EASA on the certification plans and information throughout the program, that sort of thing. And it was fed back from EASA that things like clear description of the project, that also helps with the LOI side of things. It also helps going around the loops several times, trying to get a clear understanding of the program. And especially when, you know, you get more familiarization with the more complex projects up front. Hence, that's why the DOID helps a lot of the time, because that can incorporate that information into everybody's certification program. And also it says to address to relevant persons, which I believe is meant that throughout a program, rather than leave the submittal of documentation to the last minute, where the regulators then have a box of documentation or through CPAC, whatever, to review, you feed that documentation in throughout the program at the right points. And, and again, maybe work it such that you're able to submit them at a draft so that they get sight of a document, especially towards the end of a program where you're dealing with a compliance checklist. We found it doesn't hurt to submit that document in. The regulators get a chance to look through it. They agree it in principle. You do your cabin compliance, and then it's just a signature and you submit it in. So basically, it's finding ways between both industry and with EASA to sort of, I suppose, break some of the traditional ways of working. Is that once you've done it, compliance verified it, submit it in, and then we'll review it, is that you can do it, staging it through the program, and also being able to deal directly with the experts, so that, you know, internal CVEs can deal with the experts, with the regulators. We've had a mixture of being able to do that, which has worked very, very well, and then other times where we've had to go through the PCM, and then it's up to him to distribute if he's around to actually see it. I'll pass the other subjects over to my colleague, Alistair.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Nigel. We've got just one more slide. The right-hand side? No.
That's it, that's the one.
Okay, can't drive that. I'm just going to cover the other issues which were brought up. Nigel has covered the two main ones. So there were a number of minor issues that more minor in nature than what Nigel's described. One of the first ones was, first question asked really was how to handle the use of PEDs when passengers can take phones on and then PA announcements still be heard and audible for the passengers and getting them to pay attention. That was discussed a little bit. The difference then between carry-on equipment and what's actually installed was also, EASA's opinion was asked about that. And basically, as it says on the slide, really, if it's removed again, it could be considered carry-on. But if it was remaining on the aircraft, EASA's position was that it's not carry-on. And then the final point there is that somebody asked if the examples of major and minor changes which used to be there was going to be added to or extended. And there is a move, I believe, to put more examples up to make it more black and white, as it says there. Still, there will be grey, I suspect, so it'll never be completely defined. So it was also asked, mentioned that Dominic actually mentioned that wheelchairs were also being considered to be taken on board and used. And if there was any progress on that, but I don't think that there was. So that was another point which isn't on the slide. So, and that was about it. I would just like to thank Sabine for organising the meeting, and
yes,
for Carla for the rest of the.
Thank you
2 days.
very much.
Thank you
Very much.